Diesel's new album, Sunset Suburbia, has been coming to us over a long time. The initial idea was Mark Lizotte, aka Diesel, would release batches of songs as EPs over a year and then drop the album at the end of the project. That project was titled Sunset Suburbia. It is Diesel's first album of original songs since 2013 and his first album since Americana in 2016.
Mark Lizotte is back, Diesel, with a brand new record, Sunset Suburbia. And I think, Mark, we started talking about this over a year ago. Firstly, welcome to Noise 11. And, well, it's good to see that we've got to the end of this long journey.
Yeah, we're somewhere along the trajectory.
So this started off as a series of EPs. And I remember, when we were talking about when the first EP came out, you were talking about how basically we were drip feeding the fan base in a different way, I guess, as a result of how people absorb new music now through streaming technologies. You know, you don't have to do that whole album at the beginning and then release the singles. Now you can do a series of songs and then do the album at the end of the project.
Yeah, I think it's really changed the whole idea. I think, being able to make something and literally have it streaming by I wouldn't say even the day that you make it, the hour that you make it, almost the minute you make the song, you can have it up and streaming these days. So that's kind of changed. It's not so much of a collector mentality with I'm going to collect all these songs and then I'm going to, put it out as an album. And all the, the young artists that I work with these days that, I always kind of ask them well, what's your plan? You're like, what do you want to release? And it's always EP. And some of them don't even say then I want to do an album. It's just, no, I just want to do EPs, so there's a different mentality now. An album is still a format and without a doubt, for some people, they want that space, they're not happy with 4 or 5 songs. They're like, no, I need more space. And there's no limit now on, the CD kind of dictated 80 minutes. We thought that was, wow, that's cool. We got so much more space now than a vinyl record. And that kind of, that sort of really shaped that whole period. The 90s was all about, 17, 18, 20 even songs, hidden tracks, And I'm not sure I agree with that either, It certainly was fun, getting a CD and it just kept going and going and going. And you're like, my God, and then realize that they pushed it to, just shy of 80 minutes because I don't think you could actually use 80 minutes. There always had to be some for the code and whatnot. But that's like 2 albums,
Well, that's material. Right. When you think about what an album used to be through the classic periods of the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, an album was 40 minutes because it was vinyl.
Even shorter too, 30, 35. The early Beatles albums were, under 40 minutes. So, yeah, I think that's kind of like, I think there's a lot to be said about just, concise. And, there's that cliche that people have always commented on, there's that, with albums, there's that come in swinging, punch, 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 and then there's that lull, and then okay, put the good song at the end, but there's always that slump, in albums, and so many, and it's a cliche thing to say, and artists would hate to hear that, but there's a lot of albums that do have that. So maybe those tracks aren't supposed to be on the album. Maybe they're good for another project. It's not necessarily that they're just rotten songs. Maybe they just don't fit into that, but you've tried to expand it out too much. So yeah, I mean, for me, making the EPs was instantly it felt like, wow, this is so much easier than an album. Getting 4 songs to feel cohesive, and it's a mini album, and that kind of was just a good stepping stone for me to kind of then sort of ease into the album. And sure enough, the EP started feeling kind of cohesive to sounding like they could all be, with part of an album. The albums ended up being, the majority being songs that people haven't heard before. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, because By the Scars is more than a year old now. And when that first came out, you were saying that you actually had most of the songs together for what has become this album. Did you stick to that plan? Is it that collection of songs that you were talking about a year ago?
there's two or three that I did after I assembled the small but steadfast troop contingency of my drummer and engineer, and we kind of, I didn't sort of make it really definitive of saying like, thanks guys, we're done now, woo, it's a wrap. I just kind of like left it sort of open-ended, but then I ended up doing three just on my own, like without, kind of doing it in the way that we were doing it, which was kind of like me coming in, sketching something, and then banging some bass and drums and sort of doing it from a sketch. I just suddenly had these late arrivals came, and I was just kind of, I approached it like, I'll just do like a demo or whatever. I'll just do some kind of version. I mean, I thought, like, what am I doing? I'm like, this is it. This can be the version, just because I guess I was being that traditionalist where I'd made a record in a certain way, and to add things on felt like incongruous. And I thought, no, it's as long as they sound like they are related, and they are, I can kind of bring that thread of the palette of colors and into it, and it's not going to be like the end of the world. It's just a different. I'm still, I guess, even after having my own studio and being the master of my own destiny for some time now, I still have ghosts on my shoulder of like, having to go through the whole process of like, okay, book the studio time, is that whole kind of process of, like, these are the songs I want to record, submitting them to the label, blah, blah, blah. I don't, not that I ever got scrutinized, and I've always been given, I have to say, for the record, creative control. If there's anything that I can listen to and go, what the heck was I thinking, or whatever, I've only got myself to blame, basically. I've never been like told what to make, how to make it. Only helped by A&R people over the years, I have to say. But yeah, it's still a novelty to be able to just go make my own decisions. I guess that's what I'm getting at, to be able to just go, hey, I want to add a couple of songs onto this record at the last 11th hour. So that's what happened.
Yeah, we had Sunset Suburbia 1 released in August 2019, then 2 came out in September. And I guess at that point we were planning for a very normal 2020 to happen, where you could get out the road and perform and just release the music as come by. How has this whole COVID thing changed your year that would have been?
Well, I mean, we picked up the tour like a piece of furniture, literally, and just picked the whole thing up and then just put it into next year as gently as we could without dismantling it, because it's hard to just kind of get all the same venues and go, can we just have this, but just a year later, like, thankfully most of for the band tour, at least, that happens around this time. Actually, next year I'll be touring this album, which is a weird concept, but I guess the only rationale that I can apply to it is, growing up, you'd get an album and then you'd sort of wait for the band to tour, especially if they were from overseas. You'd be like, maybe I'll see this band or artist or whatever a year from now, sort of thing. And that's how long it would take. And that's kind of what it's, my message, I guess, to my fans, of just like, enjoy the album for a year. Hopefully I'll see you in a year playing the songs live, and I'll have time to germinate. Because a few times I've felt like we drop the album, go out there and play the songs, and I'm like, not sure they even have had a chance to really like absorb this album, And then as the tour's coming to an end, that's when it starts to, you feel something and you go, oh, we're done now. Now I want to start it again. So like we don't have any danger of that this time. So there's that positive. But it's a mine. The whole thing is just a big mine. Insert explanatory insert word there. But it's just, yeah, it's really kind of starting to feel like, it's not, we're not going, I don't think we're going back to just like the summer's going to kick in and suddenly everything's going to be like hunky-dory again. It's going to be phases and phases, and a slow but steady, I hope, return. But, it is what it is. I think that's it is what it is. And then you can't forget that the people are losing their lives. So, I just have to keep reminding myself that it's like, yeah, it's an inconvenience and blah, 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 blah. But you know what I mean? It's like there are people doing it really tough. So I just, especially having my family, people that have worked in the health industry. My mum was a nurse, two sisters are nurses. My brother was even doing nursing. I feel that, yeah, if you were in that industry, you would have a different, you wouldn't be so like, can we just get things back to normal? Like work, put yourself in those people's shoes for one day and you'll have a different perspective of everything.
Let's talk about the term suburbia that you use in the title of this record, because suburbia for me, I grew up in the Sutherland Shire at Engadine, when Engadine was cut off from Sydney with the Royal National Park through the 60s and 70s, and then, now live 30 floors in the air in the middle of Melbourne, which it still feels like suburbia to me. You started off in the United States and ended up in Western Australia, and your suburbia was from two totally different hemispheres. What does suburbia mean to you?
Well, I mean, I guess it means that, like the things that I write about in the song, I try to get everything that is nostalgic and that sort of impacts me and gets my mind ticking, which are the smells, and the sights and the smells. That time of day when I, as a kid, when you'd go past everyone's houses and you smell and you hear what the music they're playing, you smell their dinner that they're cooking. It was always kind of like interesting and kind of alluring, and just the close proximity of everybody together like that. But they're all living these sort of separate lives, and they make their little domains like even though like they've got someone right next door, they've painted a different color and really be specific about, this is my piece of heaven or whatever, and it always kind of amazes me. It's like you got a house that's really dilapidated next to a place that's like manicured within an inch of its life, with the garden gnomes and the bird baths and everything, and it's the little ornaments that people put. It's all of that. It's that kind of pride, which I find people can laugh at it very easily and sort of go, oh, look at that, what a waste of time. But it's, there's a reason why we do this. I think we've been doing it for a long time, whether it's a mud hut or a 3-story McMansion, it's what we do. And for some reason, the suburbia as a term it's always been such a derogatory word. It's like suburbia. People say it with this kind of like they dredge up this sort of derogatory, suburbia, it's like they just want to vomit when they say that word. And that's, that's where the title came from. The kind of the joining of a word that is always used in a romantic kind of way, sunset, sunset suburbia. They sort of juxtapose and jar. That's what I was hoping for. And I just think, everyone's entitled to their little glass of Chardonnay in their jacuzzi in their backyard, even if it does have a train overpass going over it, which is around, like, that actually is something that I can actually point out in my area, which is, I just find it like cool. And it's easy to kind of like just go, oh, that's ridiculous. What are they thinking? Or, they're kidding themselves or, whatever. But I just love how people take that sort of pride and they make something of their, whatever it is.
Last year, actually, 2019 marked the 30th anniversary of the Johnny Diesel and the Injectors album. I look back at that album now and the songs on there, Soul Revival, Don't Need Love, Cry and Shame, Looking for Love. I mean, if you opened a set with those 4 songs, at the end of the 4th song, the audience could pretty much have a cigarette and then put its pants on and go home.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it was an album that luckily, it got time to germinate. And, that was my sort of pub rock fantasy. Call it that. People like to kind of, it's a word, it's a term that gets kind of like used, and I don't have a problem with that sort of pub rock, because that's kind of it came from me watching bands playing in pubs, and there was a huge influence on that part of my, I guess, once I'd written that batch of songs and I had that model. The thing is like people like always want to know why didn't, what happened? Why did you, not make album number 2? And it's like, well, to be honest, that was, you know, like a project, and I wrote for that kind of genre and that thing. And then my career was, I think was, I was destined to be a solo artist. And, you know, what happened after that is, you know, you can say whatever you like about it, but it was definitely, you know, like if I'd made the same record, for instance, but just solo, it would have been like, well, why did you do that? You know, that was, you know, like, why didn't you just stay in the environment that you had? But it just, you know, I just didn't have the vision beyond that. And as an artist, I need a vision to work with. I can't, you know, well, I can, but I just don't, it doesn't rub with me very well. And thankfully I haven't had to, you know, just sort of toe the line of kind of like, okay, you're not feeling this, but you got to do it because, you know, it's just like, you know, the record company needs this. Come on, buddy, you know. No one said that to me, and it ever has, so I'm thankful for that. And I was allowed to, yeah, cut loose that thing, because, yeah, I just didn't have, the vision wasn't there anymore. It came and it was gone. So, which isn't a bad thing, but yeah, it you know, what happened after that was, you know, the rest of my, you know, just a long journey of visions, you know, that happened after that. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun. It was a fun time. Fun with those particular people that I was with. There was family, you know, and we got to go to a lot of places. Or like from being a band that was just like shoved in the back of a club in Perth. When I say shoved, you know, in a loving way, the industry always had a lot of respect for us. You know, I was given awards in WA at the age of like 15, I think even younger. You know, I was acknowledged, I was appreciated. I can't say we would, you know, but we've been in this, it was a town that was dominated by cover bands, and I wanted to write songs, and I never really wanted to be in anything but a band that played, you know, your own music. But I wasn't able to make much of a living out of it at that point, and we were just doing one, and we were all becoming a bit jaded, and we just did this one little gig, you know, started at like 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night and played till like 3 in the morning. And suddenly, you know, we've made a record in Memphis. When I say suddenly, there's a lot in between that, as you know. But, you know, we definitely got to live that what they call the dream of, like, suddenly you're in the studio and you're recording with a legendary producer in a legendary part of the world. So yeah, it was a great way to kick off, and it could have gone easily horribly wrong. You know, the minute I arrived in Sydney and was sleeping on Brent Eccles' couch, it could have easily just gone pear-shaped, and like so many other bands from Perth, come back 6 weeks later, go, damn, man, don't go over there. It's awful, you know. Sydney's really hard, you know, because it still is a hard town to live in. Financially, it's not cheap. Yeah, I mean, thankfully now artists, I feel, don't have to be so dictated. It's not so, you know, dictated of like, you have to go to Melbourne or you have to go to Sydney or whatever, you know. You can stay wherever you want. If you want to stay in, you know, Wangaratta or Wonthaggi or whatever, you know, you can do it and have people in Helsinki loving your music, you know. That's you know, like, how else can you describe an artist like Tones and I coming from the, you know, Byron Bay area to suddenly the global stage? It's amazing, you know, and that's how music should be, I feel.
Yeah. Well, just before we let you go, I see you've got 4 of your closest personal friends behind you there. What's the story? Are they people we know from your albums?
This guy, well, this is like, I've got my support act guitar strap on it. Yeah, this is the first guitar that when my accountant, who I've been with forever, he said, look, you need to go and spend a little bit of money, you know, it's tax time. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, he goes, just go and buy some equipment. So I went and bought this guitar back when vintage guitars were not so ridiculously expensive. And so this is like the first guitar that I bought beyond the 2 Stratocasters that I came across the desert with. And it's a 68 Telecaster. It's been on a lot of records. Like, this is the one that, yeah, it's kind of like, I'd be doing things with other guitars and be like, yeah, it's working, but I'm not kind of convinced yet. Okay, go and grab the Telecaster. And it's always like, damn you, Telecaster. It's like, I want to play other guitars, but like, go back to the it's like, why did I just not get this to start with? It's the Stanley hammer or the Stanley screwdriver of the guitars, I call it, you know. You know, yeah, I think Jimi Hendrix was quoted saying the Telecaster, it's only got like 2 sounds and they're both bad or something like that. He wasn't a huge fan of the Tele. He loved the Strat, and I understand because I love Strats too. But if you want to be, Steve Cropper, you need this Telecaster, you know. So need I say more?
Well, Sunset Suburbia, the latest album from Diesel, out, well, now officially as people are watching this. Mark, good to talk to you, and thanks for joining us at Noise 11.
Cheers. Stay safe down there.